Hey everybody, Gil here with Sailing Vessel Dream Chaser, and in this week's episode, the plan was to do a little bit more varnishing on some of the boat parts, sand some of the spindles on the calf rails, but as they say, the best laid plans of mice and men often go astray. I got down to the boat and was greeted by something that was sort of unplanned, so all of my goals and objectives for today sort of changed a little bit. Hope you guys enjoy this week's episode. I came down on the boat today and there seems to be a new 12-volt DC, and here my charger give me a nice error message here. In last week's episode, we showed how to make your bright work bright. I'll put a link right up here for it. If you didn't check it out, you might really enjoy that video. My wife and I do videos every single week about our lifestyle, living aboard and refitting our classic sailboat. If that's the type of material you think you'd enjoy, do us a favor, click on the thumbs up, the subscribe button, and that little bell icon so you get notified of any new content. Thanks, y'all. Let's get back to the video. Even if I reset it, fault 135 system shutdown, and it's a solid light, which is an unrecoverable fault. So we'll do a little diagnostics and see what that's all about. Well, there's today's unplanned project of the day. Fault 135 appears to be a DC voltage issue. What it specifically says in the book is you have a 24-volt charger connected to a 12-volt battery bank, or you have a 12-volt charger connected to a 6-volt battery bank. Correct the incorrect setup. It's been set up like this for years, so it's not something that just changed. I don't know if we took a power surge or what, but I'm going to disconnect everything. I'm going to check the voltage of the battery bank to see if that is an issue. Maybe it's so low it's running at 6 volts. It seems odd. This is a pretty high-end, sophisticated charger. It's a ProSine 3.0, so essentially it gives up to 4,000 watts of peak inverted power. It can handle a 3,000 continuous load of peak power. The charge algorithms are actually fairly smart. They will charge a dead battery even if need be, so it has some intelligence built in to start charging even a dead battery and then increase that charge or shut it down if, for example, it's a dead cell battery. So even if the batteries were really low for some reason, like power was off to the charger and you know the items that were on board ran the battery low, it shouldn't be enough to have this happen. So with that, I'm going to start tearing this apart and seeing what I can run into. But I'm just going to check a couple of things out. Check the voltage of the batteries, check the fuse, check the house bank switch, just to make sure everything's working the way I sort of expect, and then I'll ultimately disconnect power in the boat to the actual unit itself and really go in and troubleshoot at that point as well. But starting with a couple of basic items to start. So I may just have a completely dead battery, which is odd. Normally they start going down a little slower, but this thing's registering 6.2 volts. So maybe it's going to be as simple as that, but either way, I'm in here, I've got everything torn apart to get to it. I'm going to sort of build myself a rudimentary wiring diagram just to understand how all this is laid out as well. There's been a lot of things done on the boat from a wiring perspective that I found a little bit odd. As a matter of fact, as I was reading up on the ProSine 3.0, I was looking at the installation manual just to see all the features and dip switch settings and whatnot. And one of the things it talked about was the way the unit ought to be installed, vertically mounted against a dry bulkhead. Sadly, ours is horizontally mounted, and it's in a dry spot. So I have sworn I'm going to get rid of these giant 8D batteries. They are enormous and heavy and difficult to deal with. I brought McKinley down here today. I was kind of looking forward to her and I spending the day together. She'd watch some Netflix back there while I was doing some troubleshooting. I knew we'd have to run to the store and buy some kind of parts depending on what I found going on with this battery charger. And she felt warm a little this morning, but she was excited and wanted to go. We went to Starbucks and we did an hour-and-a-half date and hung out together, read books, and I ran by the post office to pick up a package. More on that video soon. I found some great emery strips that I think will help my spindles in the back. Thanks to the guys on Facebook in the Leaky Tiki forum that told me that. But yeah, we got down to the boat and I said, well, we got to go get a battery. You ready to go to the store? We'll get some lunch. And she says, oh, I want to go back to Starbucks. And I said, okay, she'll get her little apple juice or whatever. And we go inside and she gets her apple juice and I get in the front seat. I buckle her in her car seat and I get in the front seat. And I look in the rearview mirror just in time to see, you know, the projectile coming out of her mouth and just all over her, the car seat. You know, my truck that I drive when I come down to the boatyard is basically my rolling storage bin. And my new shoes were down there because I put on old ones, so my new dock shoes were on the floor, and a jacket was still sitting down there. And anyway, that will all need to be washed because it will smell tomorrow after being in the sun today. But anyway, I ended up taking her back home and told Deb, you know, she said she's not feeling well. Gave her a little bit of medicine, and as soon as we got home, she just said, "Can I go to bed?" And she laid down and went to bed. So I know she's not feeling well. But I need to come back down to the boat, so that's an hour and 40 minutes right there. So it's a 45-minute drive just each way. So anyway, I'm back. I've got my battery. I'm just doing one Group 27 deep cycle battery. I'm not going to go crazy with high-end house bank here because I intend to put 6-volt golf cart batteries and build my own series and parallel battery bank, and we'll do a video on that when we get ready to do it. But for now, I'm just going to put this single battery down in here. So here we go. So I have the galley table lowered down into the bed position. That's basically what it looks like. So over here on the right, you can see the blue cover. That's one of the 2 house banks. There was another one here, and a little Group 27 was just sitting behind the dead 8D that was here. There's an 8D in there, and there's an 8D around the back of the corner there that's also dead, the old house banks. So right here, I've got my new Group 27, and I'm just going to put it down in here. I'm not even going to tie it down or anything else. I just want to test this out and see if my faults go away here on the battery charger. All right, so I went ahead and cleaned up all these terminals real good. You can kind of see here how they're shiny. Basically just used sandpaper and sanded them all clean. Did that on all the connections. I'm going to get this battery just laid in here. Like I said, I'm not bolting this in or anything. This is just making sure this is going to do what I'm expecting it to do. Now in this one, I actually have a series of grounds that ground the rest of the house bank, and I have them on a junction here. I am going to put those on here. You'll notice I put the Xantrex temperature sensor unit right on top of here as well. I'm still getting a warning, no communication here. Change my bypass in a moment. Very small switch right here between the remote control hookup and the temperature sensor. And so I'm going to flip this little switch, and that turned off the bypass mode. So you notice the fault actually cleared. So on its own, the fault cleared off of here. You notice it's at 14.1 volts. It's putting 40 amps into the battery right now, and that's common. That's called the bulk absorption charge. Essentially, when it first kicks on, it ramps up the amperage very high, and then as it evaluates the amount of charge the battery requires, it will start to reduce that. See, we're at 30 amps right now, 37, and we'll see it continue to go down. It's showing me here that I do have power to the unit, and it is in charge mode. What's interesting to me is the fact that it is in charge mode, because I have the main breaker panel turned off. That's a little bit concerning, quite frankly. I want to see which breaker this is tied to. So that is on, right? So you can see the green light in the bottom right shows charger on. I'm going to turn off the main breaker panel. Just turned off the main breaker panel. That's the primary 30 amp service to the boat. Now I'm going to turn off the second 30 amp service to the boat, which runs the air conditioners. Now, I'm sorry, but that is relatively concerning to me. That means that somehow that battery charger is putting out voltage, and it's not on a breaker. My gosh. Well, thank gosh I didn't have a problem while I had all this disconnected, because honestly I turned off the main breaker panel thinking that that would give me what I needed, and glad I had it in bypass mode just to be safe. Let's see if we can get invert going here. I can hear it kicking on. It's in standby mode. It just went to green, which means it is now converting to 110 volts. I don't like the smell. Well, I certainly don't like that smell. It does smell like an overheating wire. I don't know how else to describe it when I go to invert on power. I've noticed this once before, and I just didn't, we don't run the inverter right now, so while we've been in the yard and tied up at the dock, I do need to do a little research on it, and I think what I'm going to really do is kind of tear this whole thing apart and look at the way it's wired. when I saw this fault that I had on this, I really started reading the installation manual start to finish and understanding and learning a little bit about the ProSine 3.0. What I found out is one of the things it says is to mount this thing vertically on a surface that's dry and potentially cool. Ours is mounted horizontally. On the surface, that may be the only thing wrong. However, if that's wrong, what else is wrong? And the fact that when I just turned my shore generator off power selector from off to shore power, the battery charger kicked on immediately. That was with the breaker panel still off. What that tells me is the battery charger, the power to the battery charger is not running through a breaker. That's concerning. The fact that when I connected the battery up to the wires, the battery charger kicked on immediately, even when I had the breaker panel off, that also worries me a little bit. So I think we need to really go through and double check all the wiring. It could very well be that this thing was not wired correctly. The other thing is the inverter on this is pretty intelligent. You can set thresholds that determine the amount of wattage detected before the inverter will automatically run from bypass, in other words standby mode, into inverting power mode. It could be that the wattage selection was high enough that the use of the 2 electric fans and the two 110 volt lights that are on right now might have been too low to trigger that threshold. So that could be another thing that's going on. Honestly, I would have assumed that the refrigerator should have tried to kick on, and that would have absolutely been enough wattage to have triggered the invert. But I didn't hear that, and I didn't want to let it go much longer. As soon as I smelled that smell, I turned everything off. So that's what happens when you get the problem du jour, unplanned boat projects, if you will.
So I was on a Leaky Tiki forum the other day, and I posed the question of, how do you go about sanding these spindles? Somebody had posted a picture of their boat, and it was beautiful. All this was down to bare teeth. And the person talked about this adhesive tape. And then somebody else mentioned emery cloth. And basically I bought a 10-yard roll of this at 120 grit, and I bought 50 yards at 220. I just grabbed a small piece just to see how well this will work. I bought this one as 1.5 or inch long tape, or 2 inches, whatever that is. I also bought a really thin 3/16 or round one to go in these edges. So just kind of see. That feels like it might be doing pretty good. That one was actually fairly worn compared to this one. This one probably won't be nearly as easy, but...
So I continued to do this for about 25 minutes or so and got 3 of the spindles done. All in all, I was pleased with the way it looked. I thought that it did a good job of getting the sanding down without a ton of extra effort.
So far I'm impressed, but, you know, like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12... So there's 25, it looks like, spindles going around just the back half of the boat. So, hey, only 23 more to go. I think I'm going to call it a day. I'm sure I'll be back tomorrow. See y'all. Safe sailing.
I hear the pieces after drying. They look pretty good. They're not smoother, so I'm going to go ahead and give it another 220 sand very gently and another coat. You can even see here the handrails. These look pretty good as well. This one feels almost a little sticky. It's a little odd. It's not still wet. It may just be a little thicker there than other places, so I'll give that a light sand as well. These are challenging. I did the top half down to about here, and I need to do the second half now.
That's sort of the before look, and then here's what they look like after using that 1-inch wide sandpaper strips or emery cloth. Bought whole rolls of it. It looks pretty good. I get a sense for how that looks. So that's cleaned up good enough to put a nice coat of varnish on and likely have it stay for a long time.
So early the next morning, I went ahead and put one more coat of varnish on before heading out of town.
So this stuff is going on pretty well. I'm actually impressed with the way it looks. I'm up to 3 coats, and with the sanding between every coat right now, it's really starting to get a good smooth finish, and it's starting to look a little bit richer. So I think by the time we get to 7 coats, it should look really good. Deb's gonna go ahead and do coats this week while I'm out of town, and we'll kind of use this as our test bed for how everything else is going with this particular varnish. I believe we're gonna use the all-wood MA on the tow rails and spindles on the boat.
So I don't actually travel much for work anymore, but this week I was taking my whole team to Phoenix, Arizona for some training. And as I left New Orleans Airport, we got this really good view as we were heading north over Lake Ponchartrain. So you can see the south shoreline there as we go from the plane. And I thought it was kind of interesting to just get a sense of how big this body of water is. As we continue to go, I'll put an arrow on the screen here. You can actually see the bridge that I end up crossing over when I drive over to work on the boat. But good flight, good set of meetings. We worked hard during the day. We played hard in the evening. There was a cool little bar right outside the hotel. We had a collegiate-style competitive game of backyard Jenga over many wine glasses and drinks. It was a lot of fun, and it starts getting a little riskier as the evening goes on. So this was a good time with our whole team.
So I gotta tell you, having the cameras on the boat is awesome. And what it allows us to do is really kind of keep an eye on things that are going on the boat while we're out of town. So while I was out of town, I actually saw this footage going on. This is kind of a single day, all sped up into 40 seconds or so. But I might have mentioned this. The boatyard had painted around the edge of the coach house roof, and unfortunately it rained that day, so they had to go back and fix that. They had sanded all that down, and today I could tell they were starting to prep the surface for the actual non-skid paint. So here what you're seeing is them sanding, prepping, wiping everything down with acetone, and then ultimately they end up rolling this stuff on, and they do the entire coach house roof. So let's take a look. I was really excited when I saw this on the footage. I couldn't wait to get back to the boat and see the progress they had made while I was gone. Got the first coat of non-skid on here too. It just rained, so you can see it beating up a little bit, but it's nice. It's not too rough. It's definitely grippy. You wouldn't want to slide across it barefooted, but it would grip. Not enough that it hurts you. Now you can see the lifelines as they go down here, the solid lifelines. So it looks good. I like the shape of them. Gives me a little bit of width to get around them here. I like. See right to where they connect up to the bow pulpit, looking straight down. And as I tip this upward, looks good there. And here's how those 2 rails look up front. Remember, the bow pulpit still needs to be straightened and welded. Nick does pretty amazing work. Those welds.